أهلا وسهلا. Greetings everyone. I'm Aya Al-Bakri, CEO of Diriyah Biennale Foundation. It's with great pleasure to introduce to you our final panel of the Diriyah Biennale public program tonight. I'd like to welcome to the stage Rakan Altouq, Kris Dercon, Alexandra Monroe, and Jوناثان Watkins. Good luck.
Okay, so this is tonight's heavyweight bout, the finale of your public program for this evening. Although I understand actually it's being followed by a performance, and we'll try to be punctual so that you get a chance to see that. Now, I'll actually start with Rakan, who's furthest from me, to tell you who he is. He is the General Supervisor of Cultural Affairs and International Relations here in Saudi Arabia, the Ministry of Culture and Vice Chair of the Diriyah Biennale Foundation. In short, a very important person. And it's great to have you with us.
Thank you.
And Kris Dercon, who is the Chief Executive of the Association of French National Museums and the Grand Palais, someone who has been very involved with the development of the art scene here in Saudi Arabia since 2010. We were talking previously in the green room behind you there. Alexandra Monroe, who I'm just about to introduce, she said this about Kris, that you have shifted the center of gravity of the French art world. So
the global art world to France.
well, there you are, even more. And Alexandra, she is the Director of Curatorial Affairs at the Guggenheim Abu Dhabi, as well as having the position for some time as Senior Curator of Asian Art and Senior Advisor Global Arts at the Guggenheim Museum, based in New York. We've crossed paths before. We both share a strong interest in art from Eastern Asia. She was the curator with Phil Tanari and Hu Hanru of the Art in China exhibition in about 5 years ago, 2017, and has a very strong interest in Japanese art. In fact, arguably, somebody who's changed the course of art history of Japan. So, with that, I mean, don't feel intimidated. And I say that seriously because I do want Q&A, and I'm going to sort of keep an eye on the time to sort of make sure that there is an opportunity for you to ask questions, as well as us talking amongst ourselves, and me starting off with the first question, which relates to tonight's topic, which is about the evolution of cultural organizations. It's something that we're all concerned with, particularly because of what we've been going through for the last 2 years, but we've become also increasingly aware through these 2 years of a situation with the need for increasing diversification in terms of artistic representation and audiences. Also, we have to pay much more attention to the environment, and that's going to affect our practices in the world of museums that we represent, but in the art worlds as a whole. So, Rakan, the first question really to you, because I think it's important that you start the ball rolling. We had a conversation yesterday, and I was so impressed by the fact that at the Ministry of Culture, you've gone back to first principles and attempted to define within this particular context, the national context, what culture means. And when it comes to cultural organizations, I mean, we talk about museums, we talk about art fairs, biennials, we talk about art schools, etc. But could you give us a sort of lie of the landscape here in Saudi Arabia, and how, what it means to you?
Thank you, Jonathan. If you excuse me, مساء الخير جميعا، وإذا تعذروني بتكلم باللغة الإنجليزية عشان ضيوفنا الكرام. So I'm happy to be with you, Jonathan, Alexandra, and Chris, and thank you for a very easy question. The lay of the land of the Saudi culture sector. So let's focus on institutions, maybe, which is our topic and what we talked about briefly in the green room and yesterday. I think we had a conversation about what is the evolution of cultural institutions globally, and then how much of that is similar to or different to what we see today in this cultural development program that Saudi Arabia is going through. And I posited to Jonathan that, and I'm talking about institutions and not cultural products, not cultural production, not cultural actors, but institutions, that the fact that we are starting in the last 3 years to establish entities such as the specialized cultural commissions in Saudi Arabia, or museums, or some of our professional associations, or a foundation like this one, has presented a unique opportunity for Saudi Arabia's cultural sector to be unencumbered by legacies. And legacies can be ideological, they can be assets that are difficult to maintain, and so on. And then what we are trying to do, the ministry and all of our partners in Saudi Arabia is in the Saudi culture sector, is to build cultural institutions that are relevant for today, that are relevant for tomorrow, that each in their own way satisfy their reason to exist, have their own audience, have their own main constituents, and that what we are seeing already in the last 3.5 years is unlocking opportunities that went beyond even our initial assumptions. So it's a positive takeaway from an opportunity which seemed like a challenge.
You started at the Ministry of Culture, I think, 2018.
2018.
Yes, so it's a very short-lived ministry, and we've talked about the evolution of cultural institutions, but to a large extent, it's an invention of cultural institutions here.
Exactly, and that's why I kind of press this point on relevance, because when you have the opportunity to invent or to create new cultural institutions, again, I don't want to take away from 60 or 70 years of cultural production in Saudi Arabia, from the non-government sector, from previous government efforts, from even commercial actors and commercial entities in Saudi Arabia active in the cultural sector. But certainly since the establishment of the Ministry of Culture, there's new life sort of that's been breathed into arts and culture. Inventing institutions, the key has been understanding what are the strengths and what are the areas where support is required, and to be balanced in how you encourage, how you catalyze activity, bearing in mind that these have to be relevant, as I mentioned, in the future, so they have to be sustainable. Your models of support, your models of activity have to be sustainable models, and I think that is what the whole Ministry of Culture team and our affiliated institutions, and increasingly the coalition that is happening around us from non-government, semi-governmental, and commercial actors, in the arts world, so galleries and so on. This soft sort of alignment that is happening naturally is painting a nice vision for what an ecosystem in Saudi Arabia can look like, a very positive one. Hopefully it can continue. And ultimately, it is in the service of the cultural practitioners themselves. It's in the service of the artists, the producers. Each entity has its own objectives that's trying to satisfy. Some, like the ministry, is thinking nationally, perhaps internationally as well, in a mass public perception way, and how do you effect change for a large swath of the population. Others, like a specialized Biennale foundation, perhaps is thinking on a different audience. A commercial entity is thinking for a different audience. But what's happening is this ecosystem is being carved out as we speak, and that's why I think it is presenting a unique opportunity to maybe do it right. I'll stop there.
You've referred particularly to biennials, and here we are sitting in the premises of a biennial. And Chris, you've had a strong, I mean, you've written at length about biennials, and it's something that's sort of concerned you for many years. In fact, you wrote a preface to the forthcoming catalogue for this biennial. And I wondered if you could say a few words in relation to what Rakan said, you know, and what can make a biennial distinct and fit for the future.
First of all, I feel incredibly privileged to be here, because this is, I've seen many biennials in my life, and this first result is absolutely important. It's also necessary. Necessary is a term I like to use when our curators, our colleagues are asking me, shall I do this exhibition or that exhibition, or shall we create this event or that event? Today I want them to tell me why that is necessary. Is this really a contribution? Because things have changed, and biennials have been going through the motion for so many years, and we can still see that, for me, the definition of a biennial is still a platform for performing, for acting out, for telling the difference. The difference on a local level, but also the difference on an international level. And that means that a biennial sometimes is almost like a para-museum. And what we see happening here is, for me, also like a kind of front, a kind of example, a test, a work in progress towards the creation of other institutions. And when I say institutions, I'm not only meaning museums, because the museum for tomorrow is, I'm not saying up for grasp, but still has to be invented. We are continuously, especially since the pandemic, reinventing the museum, from governance to what does it mean to make an exhibition, how do we make exhibitions? And Alexandra and I, we agree, I mean, exhibitions are going to change in the future because of economical reasons, because of geopolitical reasons, because of logistical reasons, and because of cost as well. So this biennial is necessary, it's a true contribution, it's a para-museum, and that's the reason also why I would like to say this, you know, you have to take this further. And that happened in so many countries. Let me give you an example of one of the oldest biennials, don't forget, is the biennial of Senegal, Dakar. And also that biennial set the tone for the creation, which we see right now, of the Museum of Civilizations in Dakar, Senegal. And for me, Alexandra, because you looked at me, a para-museum is not essentially a bad thing. It is a testing ground. It is like a work in progress. And what I see happening here is, and I've been here for many years, and I felt incredibly privileged to accompany some artists from the beginning, from this bottom-up generation until today. Artists like Ahmed Mater, Nasser Al-Salam, but also Dana Awartani. And I see a generation of artists popping up who is very strong. They understand the language, and they know that visual art is a language. And I like to quote Sheikha Mayasa in Qatar, who said to me a few years ago, she said, when these guys, the Rakans, and the Dinas and the artist Sarah and many others, when they start to create an infrastructure, when they start to make exhibitions, when they start to make biennials, when they start to continue to reinvent commercial systems, they are going to take over the Middle East, because it's an incredible strong scene. And I'm absolutely convinced that one of the strongest scenes in the Middle East, in the region, is not just the Saudi art scene, but yes, I have to say it, it's not because it was International Women's Day, but the International Saudi Woman Artist. And when I say International Saudi woman artists, I know a lot of this bottom-up generation who have been already going back and forth between London, between the United States, even between Paris, and I received many of them in Berlin a few years ago. So there is this going back and forth. Many of them decided that their main base would be would be and should be, and is going to be Saudi, Jeddah, Riyadh, and other cities, because here there is now a possibility to make work, to show work, and when I see the public last night and tonight showing up here, this is a public which is not just interested in the museum, the para-museum or the biennial. It's just like publics all over the world. They don't make the difference anymore between many different cultural experiences. And it's a public which is eager and is not going to say, I'm only interested in cinema, so this is not for me. I don't know anything about dance, so that's not for me. This public is highly educated, as all the publics in the world, and I think we highly have been underestimating audiences in the past 10 years. And we have to cater to them, and not only to their taste, but also to their knowledge and judgment. And that's the reason why I see here works which are complex, Simon Denny, about blockchain, about new technologies. I see Sarah Brahim, who is working with modern choreography. I see other pieces which are dealing with architecture, which are dealing with design. I mean, look, these are many different languages, and the public is understanding them.
I'd like to get,
and we have to listen, probably also, Rakan, that's a message for you. We have to listen in the future even better to the audiences than we did so far.
Yeah, I'd like to sort of get onto the question of audiences, not only for biennials, but also for museums, and the difference that these last couple of years may have made to the way we relate to them. But Alexandra, when Chris said para-museums, he also actually in his preface referred to biennales as post-museums, but I don't think he means superseding museums. It would be very interesting to have your view on changes that probably now have to be made in a way that weren't so clear 3 years ago. I mean, what are your thoughts with respect to the Guggenheim in Abu Dhabi in the light of what recent experiences have taught you?
Sure. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Well, first I want to say what an enormous honor it is to be here. And I offer enormous congratulations, collegial congratulations to you, Rakan, to Dina, to Aya, and especially to my dear friend, Alia Al-Sanusi, who has been such a passionate advocate for the arts of Saudi Arabia and the transformation that we've all been participating in and observing and now witnessing. Really, mabruk to all of you. I was in the green room and everyone was virtually in tears because it's the last day. And we feel that excitement, and we've been feeling that excitement since December 6th, and it just gives us so much anticipation for what the potential of the transformation that you are leading. And we, as your neighbors, are also very excited to be part of this ecosystem, which in Abu Dhabi, which I really call a massive reorientation. Art historically, culturally, and really sort of in the geopolitical realm of artistic and creative production, as we stand to really, as you keep saying the word invention, we're also inventing the future, we're shaping the future. So I would love to take the opportunity, I'm here with my colleagues, Sasha Kalter-Wasserman, Associate Director and Associate Curator of the Guggenheim Abu Dhabi project, who's been with the project based in New York since inception, building the collection, and the great scholar and curator, Sara bin Safwan, who is visiting from Abu Dhabi. And we're all very excited to be here in Riyadh, and we're going to be going on to Alula and Jeddah. We already have many Saudi artists in our collection, and we're excited to see their works in the biennial, and we're looking forward to the studio visits coming ahead. The Guggenheim Abu Dhabi is very much what you're saying. We are a legacy. It's a legacy of the Guggenheim. With that 70-year legacy comes an imprint of abstraction, comes an imprint of innovation, comes a dedication in principle around the art of our time. The Guggenheim Abu Dhabi was founded in 2006 or 7. The collection began in 2009 around three foundational pillars. The first is periodization, which is we are building a collection, and our program will be around art from circa 1960s to the present. Why 1960s? Because this is the period of when really a transnational art history, a postmodern art history, a transcultural art history really takes effect. It's really, you could say, the beginning of globalism in the arts, globalism in film, globalism in literature. It coincides, of course, with several independence movements around the world, especially on the African continent, and with an entirely new theoretical framework that modern art was not the sole invention of New York and Paris, but in fact it is a history of intersecting modernisms, of multiple modernisms. And our collection and our program is dedicated to displaying the stories of those intersecting modernisms, the peripatetic languages of artists working in many different centers, traveling the world and using a kind of common language, but to very different means, often very local means. The second pillar, well, of course, is transnationalism and these intersecting histories, 1960s. And then, of course, the most important defining aspect of the collection and program is our location, is informed by our location, just as this biennial is, and just as I imagine, Rakan, many of the projects at the Ministry of Culture here, you are defined by our location in the Global South, by our location in the Gulf, by a reorientation of the world, of populations, of migration, of thought. So we are, 50% of our collection and programming is defined by what we call WANASA, which is West Asia. We do not refer to it as the Middle East any longer. Who's middle, who's east? So we are continentally West Asia. We use and are very proud of that terminology. North Africa and South Asia. And of course, there is a strong, Islamic cultural, not strictly Arab, kind of a geographical definition of that, but we feel more importantly than that, there's a very strong intellectual and cultural language that is shared by the Wanasa region. And we are inspired by the biennial, by how you open with this transnational moment of Richard Long's great piece from Magicien de la Terre, paired with Maha Malou's fantastic new work. We're also excited we have a great work of hers in our collection. That's the kind of juxtaposition that we're interested in as well. So I think it is a time of invention, but also reinvention. I don't want to abandon scholarship. Our project is deeply committed to scholarship. Our project is deeply committed to building museological expertise in the region and drawing on generations of that expertise, but giving it all a new fresh meaning, a new spin. And for new audiences, to your point, what have we learned from the pandemic? We've learned that digital audiences can quadruple your reach. We've learned the importance of local audience. We've learned the importance of translation and interpretation. We've learned not to assume anything.
This is the emphasis on local audience is something, too, Chris, that you've referred to as well, and that maybe museums, particularly in metropolises, art hubs such as Paris, such as New York, such as London, we've been significantly hit by the implications of the pandemic, and a positive outcome might be a sort of rethinking with respect to local communities and our relationship to local communities. And the Guggenheim is famous, Alexandra, for the Bilbao effect, and
It only happened once.
In Bilbao.
And now it's going to happen in Abu Dhabi, but it only happened once.
Yes. But of course, do you want this? And this is a question, Rakan, for you. Do you want, with the development, evolution, and invention of cultural organizations, an influx of tourists I mean, and is it a way of sort of boosting tourism with all the environmental problems that that might bring, or develop local audiences to become more conversant in, with respect to visual arts and all the creativity that is represented by the cultural organizations that you're dealing with?
Can I just rephrase as a way of provoking things?
Sure.
Your question. Rakan,
there's already enough provocation.
Rakan, do you need here in Riyadh or Jeddah, do you need the Louvre Abu Dhabi or Guggenheim Abu Dhabi?
You just named them Abu Dhabi, so that's, I think...
but no, I really, I
think
have
that's
to
interesting.
really defend the partnership.
No,
We're
I'm saying...
an international global age. We were, by the way, invited by the UAE government, by the government of Abu Dhabi. These are partnerships, and there are exchanges involved. And let me say, we're learning so much. How about the effect that such an exchange can have back, not only on the Guggenheim in New York, but by extension, many, many other museums that we already have the stature to influence.
Yeah, I'll address what you mentioned then, Alexandra, your response, but then go back to Jonathan's. Do you need a Guggenheim Abu Dhabi or a Louvre Abu Dhabi? The last 3 months we've had a UCCA Diriyah. Yeah. So there's always opportunity for partnership with institutions that are deep in their cultural knowledge, in their scholarship, in their academic program, and that's something obviously that we need to work on. Now, you're referencing a particular kind of partnership, and that's a big question that is appropriate to address just in the context of evaluating different modes of partnerships, but not in just broad cultural development. So on what you mentioned, on museums, tourism, sustainability. I think that was, is that fair? That
yes,
was the
question. There's this whole thing about, we reduce carbon imprint by reducing the number of loans, and we reduce the carbon imprint by, making our environmental conditions a little less stringent, and we reduce our carbon imprint by working a little bit more digitally, but what about all the people who make the journeys to this place?
So all the people to make the journeys, and I think, let me start with one of the early questions and tensions that were always present in designing what this sort of national culture outlook is in 2018, so not so long ago. The tension was for a place that is going, sort of a sector or a space within Saudi Arabia that is going to get a lot of activity. You can already forecast that biennales were going to happen and art shows are going to happen and museums will be developed and so on. Is this tension of your preservation almost role and your nudge to evolution, and I hate to use the word, but modernization. I'm sure there's a better word than that. But how do you maintain the right level of tension in what we are doing, so that at the end of the day, we are, as a Ministry of Culture, we are tasked with safeguarding the heritage of Saudi Arabia. The panel before us included Dr. Jasser Al-Hirbish, who's the CEO of our Heritage Commission, with a massive mandate that is as important as this Biennale, if not more, or as the visual arts movement. So these tensions always existed in how we think about developing the culture sector. They are also present in thinking about tourism. Now, there is a very ambitious tourism agenda that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has started. 3 years ago, my 3 co-panelists needed to apply for visas, and I think you all got them on arrival or online before traveling this year. And the tourism agenda is part of a bigger economic diversification plan, and I don't need to tell the audience, or I think my co-panelists, about Vision 2030 and the effects that transformation program has started already showing on the economy of Saudi Arabia, but that's where this all comes together. Now, museums as institutions, as buildings, as locations, certainly are drivers of tourism. That is That is something we know, and I think the opportunity, again, with inventing, as we said earlier in the discussion, is that we are already seeing in Saudi Arabia a much more conscious, deliberate way of thinking about blending sort of culture, heritage, and tourism together. That is, again, uniquely afforded to the time we are in, the time when our transformation is taking place, and the unique comparative or competitive advantages that exist in Saudi Arabia.
Yep.
The topography and its diversity, the diversity of the 13 regions, what they all offer in terms of culture and cultural production, the diversity of climate, and so on. So I'll maybe highlight one example in Al-Ula. So Al-Ula, as you know, is an important development program, but in addition to announcing the restoration and renovation of heritage locations such as Hegra, Ikma, and so on, and in addition as well to an important investment program in tourism and tourism development and the hospitality industry, Al-Ula developed its charter for sustainable development, which includes things that are important to maintain both its advantage economically, which is important for the growth of tourism, but it also nods to the sustainability side of how do you think of the future of tourism. So one small example, but to show you how detailed some of this work goes. One of the 11 tenets of the development charter of Al-Ula includes the preservation of the night skies of Al-Ula, the darkness of the night of the skies of Al-Ula. So on a clear night in Al-Ula, which is most nights, you can see the stars on the horizon. That's not something you can see. You can see a dome above you, but you can see the stars on the horizon. And to develop sustainably is not just to limit the number of people who are coming in, but it is also to think about your location, to think about its uniqueness, to think about your role as a custodian of this location, culturally in terms of heritage, and the custodian of the residents, citizens, their prosperity as well in the location. So I think blending all of these together, and Al-Ula has provided an excellent example in what they're doing, and I think the rest of Saudi Arabia's cultural tourism and heritage development plans are coming from the same mindset, but perhaps Al-Ula has outpaced everyone for now. Will use the same idea in how they think about the uniqueness of what we are doing to invent sustainable and relevant ways of our own transformation.
I just would like to add something to that.
Okay,
I think
Chris.
if we say tourism, we really have to pay attention, because since the pandemic, and again, since what's happening in Ukraine, we know how weak tourism can get to be. And, you know, Versailles and the Louvre and even the Centre Pompidou in Paris, they lost basically 75%. We had hoped that these things would going to come back. Now we see the same thing happening with the situation in Europe. So lesson learned, we have to make sure that our museums in the first place start to think what we can do about local communities and how we can keep speaking to them. And tourism is becoming, I'm not saying it's a trap, but it's a very, very weak aspect of our cultural industry by now. And we are now warned that our problem with tourism in Paris, for God's sake, for Paris, is going to continue like this until 2025, 2026.
So you're in the process of changing a business model?
The business model is definitely changing. We know that the Louvre, for instance, and they never had to think about local tourists and local communities because they were thriving off Asian tourists and American tourists, and now they are not coming anymore, and they are not coming back again because of what's happening in Europe. So we have to completely reinvent the politics and the economical models of these institutions. And, you know, maybe the same thing is going to happen here. So tourism, yes, but which kind of tourism? That's all I wanted to.
Alexandra.
May I just jump in?
Of
And
course.
thank you so much, Rakan, for describing this strategy, which I know you've been the visionary for. I must congratulate the Saudi Arabia pavilion team for the Dubai Expo, which, as I told my colleagues, you blew it out of the water. And the explanation that you just presented was exactly what was presented in the pavilion. It was incredibly impressive, from the heritage to the sustainability to innovation to that fantastic final immersive work of art. So really, congratulations. If that pavilion is a blueprint of what you are planning to fold out across the land, we're all very excited.
But there are very few people visiting the Dubai Art Expo.
No, the 3 million people. No, actually, it
I
was
mean-
hugely it was hugely attended. Yeah, and it was mostly local.
Well, there may be somebody from Dubai who can tell us exactly what the story is.
I think we're up to like 6 million visitors. I mean, it's very well attended.
Okay, I'm going to make a quick point, and then I'm going to actually turn to our local audience. But just to say, in relation to Rakan's illustration, the idea of the night sky being something that you want to preserve as part of your culture resonates very strongly. And very interestingly, just prior to this conversation, I was meeting with a local artist, with Sarah Ibrahim, and she was talking about how much more beautiful a sky can be than any work of art.
Only Sarah can say that.
Okay, so now, can any of you say anything as poetic as that? Here, we've got about, because I should really give you about 5 minutes, I think, to get to the performance, so we've got about 8 minutes, possibly a chance for 2 or 3 questions. So don't be shy. And is there a roving mic? Great. So yes, do pipe up.
Hi, Hadia Sanusi. Thank you to you all for being here. And I think my question actually is related to the amazing things that have been happening the last 3 months, but also the last 12 years, the last 20 years. A very emotional moment for us all, I think, here. But so many of the visitors who have come and who have been amazed by what is happening here are saying, can this last? So I think, Rakan and Chris and Alexandra and Jonnathan too, how do we make this last, and how do we make this sustainable and grow and continue and flourish?
Yes, you don't want it to be one of those biennials that only happened once. Because, how could it be a biennial then?
Half of the biennials is only happening once.
Well, yes.
So, may I? I think all of us probably are answering this question in some way. So, Ali, I think there's certainly a euphoria of the first biennial. And I think we as a team will leave today and still be euphoric. But over the next 1 to 2 weeks, we have to sort of go back and see what actually worked out, and this euphoria will subside. And there are so many lessons from this particular biennial. But I think what was mentioned is, can this last? And we've had an amazing 3 months in the arts, and I'll focus on the visual arts space now. And Dina is in the first row, and she can add anything she would like. But it's been a moment of activity that I think is new and exciting for a lot of people who are in this world that is ever expanding. And, I'm suddenly included in the art world in Saudi Arabia. I was never a part of the art world in Saudi Arabia. And it's just continuously expanding and growing. And the excitement of a particular event may subside, but what will last is what I kind of mentioned in the beginning, which is this informal collaboration that is happening by multiple actors in the visual arts world in Saudi Arabia. and beyond, and our partners from around the world, of everybody kind of just feeling the energy that's really being unleashed of Saudi artists and people who are producing art within Saudi Arabia or inspired by Saudi Arabia or because of Saudi Arabia in one way or another. It's people, it's locations, it's night skies. And that's something that can last. That's not something that necessarily is dependent on capital. It's not necessarily dependent on taste that is, needs to be made. It's not dependent on taste making. It's dependent on stable institutions that need to be relevant, and hopefully we're on that path.
It's new, and in between biennials, there's a lot going on in between biennials, isn't there?
There's a lot.
But I think one of the things which should be considered is that here are some works which I think you need to keep for your museums. In terms of a collection strategy, I hope, and I do hope, as happens in other countries, that there will be a kind of committee and they're going to pick 2, 3, 4, 5 works and say we want to keep this for our future museums. A second example is walking around in the biennial, these mediators, these people who take the visitors almost by the hand and explain the works. Immediately it rang to me a bell. I would like to start immediately next week, because it's the last day, with a schooling system where those people who have been working here, that they are welcome, and we're going to give them courses in history of art because we need them for the future. So big things, buying works of art, keeping them, smaller things, having a schooling system, and especially right now, until you have created this museum infrastructure, which I believe is going to be fantastic. But don't forget that to create this, it takes time, that you will continue to do smaller things, maybe less ambitious, but on a regular basis, that there is a trace of the biennial. And there is something which is called the biennial every 6 weeks here in Riyadh, with discussions, with the artists, with whatever. I mean, so you have to keep the flame going.
Art education in schools is a very important thing, isn't it, I think? I mean, and it's something that we feel very strongly. And Alexandra?
I have an answer for you. Of course. And Alia, I think you were out of the room when I... No, I was upstairs. Oh, okay, good. So you heard my homage. We're watching from upstairs. Thank you. I just want to be... I'm inspired to quote Yoko Ono, who said, "A dream you dream alone is only a dream. A dream you dream together is reality." So I think you just keep dreaming. That's my answer to you. And regarding Phil, yes, I've known Phil since he first moved to Beijing in the early 2000s, and he was a member of the Guggenheim's Asian Art Council, which is our think tank that guides the development, acquisition, and program and scholarship surrounding our Asian Art Initiative, which I founded in 2006. And I invited him, along with Ho Han-ru, to curate this massive history of conceptual art in China, which was really the kind of breakthrough of that show was coming up with a periodization of 1989 to 2008 as the period of globalization, dates that had tremendous resonance within China, but also had tremendous resonance internationally. And I'm pleased to see that some of the artists in that show and some of the thinking of that show that was also, of course, using 1989 as a threshold of looking at sort of massive changes in history and culture have also found their ways here. So yes, I'm filled with awe for Phil, and I'm very excited that you have invited him into your family.
Well, if you wondered why occasionally we looked a bit self-conscious and nervous up here, it's because we're very aware of the fact that this event is being streamed, and chances are that Phil Tanari is watching. So I think we should say, Phil, we wish you were here. and from all of us on the panel, Rakan, Chris, Alexandra, and me. I can't thank you enough for being here, and to the biennial, a million thanks from me for giving me the privilege to chair this interesting conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.